Presiding Officer, last week we had a plethora of annual statistics released about Scotland's education system. These statistics, I believe, ought to have been a focus of the business of this Parliament last week, but because they could cause all of us to sit up and take notice. We should have had the opportunity, I believe, to have heard last week from the Cabinet Secretary, but we didn't. I tried every way which I knew how to get this issue into the business papers of Parliament, but was unsuccessful. We have just had a topical question that was answered, in part at least, by the Minister, in relation to some of the evidence that has been delivered through this statistical release, namely that we have fewer teachers and more pupils and therefore greater class sizes, and as a consequence of the budget on top of that, we are looking at councils now talking about having shorter periods, shorter school days, shorter school weeks, and there is the question of the diminishing range of subject choice that is available to our young people in secondary schools. On top of that, as I've already mentioned, there is the question of the rising class sizes as ratios are ditched for financial expediency in some part, but largely through the neglect of the Scottish Government. And as has also been mentioned, there is grave concern among teachers about a number of issues, not least of which is the level of classroom violence that they encounter. And teachers ought not to have to worry about their safety in the classroom. I would say, Presiding Officer, that if we aren't focused as a Parliament on the quality of our children's education and the clear issues we are facing in the education system, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic, then all I can say is that we ought to be. And that is why I want a statement, a ministerial statement, inserted into the business of this chamber tomorrow, so that the government can come to this Parliament in the form of the Cabinet Secretary or a Minister and be scrutinised on the basis of the data that we now are in possession of. The decline in the number of teachers in our schools and other data that has been released through the summary statistics for schools in Scotland 2022. As I say, sadly, the sum total of this data does not make pretty reading. But that perhaps explains why the Scottish Government have been so reluctant to come to this chamber and to make a statement. It might also explain why the Scottish Government have removed Scotland from international league tables for education. Because I'm afraid those league tables and the limited data that we have available to us would undoubtedly show, and indeed do show, that the SNP have mismanaged our education system, and there is a need for greater scrutiny of this policy area, perhaps than any other policy area. But I do frankly worry that there is worse to come, Presiding Officer, because of the budget and because of the commentary that there has been plenty of in the media about the consequences that flow from this budget. There is going to be another round of real terms cuts to local government, and this will undoubtedly have an impact on the education system, which is a big ticket item for every local authority. And there will be an impact as well on extracurricular activities, which add so much to children's experience at school. So in conclusion, Scottish education used to be the envy of the world, but the limited data we have available to us now shows that there has been 15 years of mismanagement at the hands of this government, and many of us in this place believe that Scotland's children and young people deserve better, and that's why it's imperative that the SNP government make a statement about the curriculum for excellence data, and that should happen tomorrow, as I'm suggesting, so that we can begin a more serious look at these statistics in the context of the work of this Parliament, which is fundamentally why the people of Scotland elect us.